All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final session of Dare to Be Great 2. I am here with my good friend Stash and Atu.
How did you recognize me? How did that? I was
Oh,
undercover.
that's amazing, man. This is my good friend Don Jones, and he's the dispatch manager at the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office out of California. And his session today is going to be Tubbs Fire and the impact on the dispatch center. Take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Ricardo. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody, to the last presentation here. Dare to Be Great 2. What an amazing week. Proud and honored to be a part of these select group of speakers that you've been able to listen to and to watch this week. I am Don Jones. I work for the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. I've been doing this now for about 20 years. I have a tattoo to prove it that Ricardo helped me design. Next time you see me at a conference, I'll be happy to show it to you. I started my career at a small agency. About a year later, I came to work for the Sheriff's Office and then kind of progressed through the ranks there. Little did I know I was going to be a part of the 2017 fires, the 2019 fires, the 2020 fires, and a global pandemic, but here we are. So my hope is that through the course of this hour, I'll share my story with you. Some of you might have some similar stories that we can kind of commiserate together. This is the 3-year anniversary of the 2017 fire, and I can tell you that on my way driving here today, I'm probably a little bit more emotional than I normally am about this. We all know the anniversaries of these major events have a tendency to hit us in the heart. I want to give a shout out to my family, my La Familia, Cal Nina. Thank you for your support. They're actually the reason why I created this presentation. I did that back in 2018. And I want to give it a shout out to my beautiful wife, Susan, for putting up with me through all these fires and a global pandemic. And I'm sorry I chew loud. So thank you for that. If not, let's get started. All right. So, all right. How do I? Next slide, Ricardo. Next slide.
You'll have to focus.
I got it. There we go. There we go. Okay. So here we are, October 8th, 2017. This is the morning of. This is Sunday morning. There's a couple reasons why I show you this picture. One, just to show you the blue sky there. It's kind of a warm day there in October. Not necessarily unseasonably warm, but just warm. Plus, I look pretty dang good on a tractor. So there's me on a tractor. There's some of my family there on the right-hand side. We're in a little hay bale, hay ride there. And just kind of one of those great days. We're just kind of enjoying it. Little did I know my life was going to forever change. That night, as I'm kind of getting ready for bed, we have this large mirror in our bedroom, and I was getting ready for bed, and it fell because the wind was just howling that night at around 9 o'clock. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, I really hope it's not that busy in dispatch tonight. Well, I was unfortunately wrong about that. So what had happened is the Tubbs fire actually started in a neighboring county in Napa County, which is next door to us there on Tubbs Lane, hence the Tubbs fire name, at about 9:45. And then we had another fire started in the Nuns Canyon area around 10 o'clock. And then at the same time, we had a Presley fire that was burning on Crane Ranch Road, approaching the city of Rohnert Park. And also the Atlas fire, which is burning in a different part of Napa County. So we had a lot going on that Sunday night. And this is kind of a picture of that. You'll see the Tubbs fire there kind of in the middle. The Atlas fire there on the far right, and the Nuns Canyon Presley fire. This is kind of an older picture after it happened, but you can see we have a lot going on at one time that we're trying to manage. So you talk about a fire, you really had to kind of distinguish which fire you were talking about, because fires were just really going all over the place with the way the wind was howling. This is now unfortunately an outdated slide, but this is the top 20 at the time most destructive California wildfires. We had 4 of the top 20 going on all at the same time. The Tubbs fire at the time was number 1 with 5,300 structures, then the Nuns, then the Atlas, and also Redwood Valley, which is actually just in the county north of us up in Mendocino. So it was a pretty destructive time for our community, and just a lot going on. And then unfortunately, this is not a record that you want to be a part of and break. But unfortunately, the very next year, the Camp Fire over in Butte County burned over 10,000 structures. And even this year in California, 2020, we have had 4 million acres burned so far this year, and we have 2 months left of fire season, which we're not looking forward to. But we're ready, but we're definitely not looking forward to it. So what's the staffing for us on a Sunday night, where we normally operate 2 radio frequencies 24/7? One's our primary channel, one's our secondary channel for wants and warrants, tows, things like that. We have 3 call takers on duty and 1 supervisor. Normally about 9 o'clock we start breaks, so usually there's 1 less person as we rotate through the breaks. So basically there were 6 people on duty that night when this event started. Our normal call volume a week prior, on October the 2nd, we took 70 911 calls the entire day. We took 322 10-digit emergency line calls throughout that day. In our busiest hour, we took 31 calls of all the different telephone lines that we answer at 11 a.m. In contrast, fast forward to October 9th, we took 913 911 calls. We took over 1,900 10-digit emergency lines, and we answered 357 calls in an hour at 1 a.m. There was 6 people on duty, and you can see the call volume just completely just shatters itself. 354 at 3 a.m., 348 at 2 a.m. Just a lot going on. When the actual fire broke, you can see there on October the 8th, there that Sunday, we started with 130 in that 1 hour, then 280, and then obviously up to that 357 peak that we had. So, but our call volume, our answer time, we had 307 911 calls there on October 8th. Our average duration was 79 seconds. And as you know, the NINA standard is that you want to have 95% within 15 seconds. Well, we did 99 in 15 seconds, even with that call volume. And on October the 9th, 913 911 calls, we still beat that NINA standard with 97% in 15 seconds, which means we kicked ass, which we did. The people on duty did everything they could to answer that phone to give people the help that they needed and wanted. It's just an amazing crew to be a part of. I'm happy that I was able to join them. So about 1 o'clock in the morning, I received a call from the dispatch supervisor who's on duty, and this is what he said to me. And I know earlier we had heard that presentation of 22 words. Well, mine was 15. I'm not sure what you can do, but the whole county is on fire. Well, I will be right there. My wife, who had woken up because of the phone ring, said, "What's going on?" I said, "The entire county is on fire. I got to go." So sure enough, I put on my ball cap, put on my polo shirt, and walked outside, and I'm like, we're in big trouble. You could smell the smoke. The wind was howling like nobody's business. And I grew up in the South a little bit, so I'm familiar with hurricanes and those types of winds. The winds were atrocious. So I get in my car, and I'm traveling northbound on 101, a little freeway here. I'm doing about 90 miles an hour because there's nobody out there, and there's the wind, there's debris everywhere. And as I'm driving towards our office, I see the glow, and I'm driving towards the glow, which is not something you normally want to do, is drive towards the fire, but there I was. We normally have 6 workstations filled. Within 2 hours, all 11 workstations were filled in our facility. So we went from 6 to 11 within the matter of a few hours because people were waking up, smelling the smoke, and then self-dispatching themselves back into work. We needed as many people as possible. And I'm sure in your agency you have a way of like doing call-outs and overtime for sick calls. Well, of course we send pages, right? And most of the dispatchers, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, they're not necessarily answering their phones. So we weren't sent messages, but of course they went on red because people were sleeping. It wasn't until people would wake up in the middle of the night due to the smoke because it was so thick that they looked at their text messages and saw, hey, we need help, desperate need, mayday, mayday, that people just started to respond in. We had a phone trainee working that night, and she was brand new. And in retrospect, what we should have done is we should have had her take our phone list and actually call people on the phone and actually waking them up going, hey, we need some additional assistance in here. Can you please help? It wasn't that they weren't willing to help. It was just getting them awake so that they could come in and help us out. So in retrospect, that's something we would have done differently if it happens again. What's interesting is that, we're on backup generator, which is great, right? You need a backup generator facility. I'm sure a lot of you have them. I'm sure you do monthly testing, which is what we do, which is great to have. But the problem is that only essential power is on. So yeah, the CAD system's working. We're working the phones. All the computers are humming, and that's all great. But the air conditioner is not an essential function. So yeah, it was hot in the dispatch center, which it's hot and cold in dispatch centers, I'm sure, all across the country. But what was important here is that it was cooling our radio room. So we were in the process of we could have potentially lost our radios due to overheating. That means that all the fire communication was going to be lost because we were housed in the same building. All the communication with all the deputies out in the field were going to be lost as well. So that was a huge issue for us. And also we had no water, which means no bathroom, which is a big deal. So I walked downstairs into where the command staff was meeting, and I'm like, hey, we got to deal with this bathroom issue. And they're like, hey, Jones, just go over in the back parking lot, go in the corner. I'm like, we're not talking about me. I'm talking about the men and women, mostly the women that I work with upstairs in dispatch. They're like, oh. Little did I know, we have a porta potty in our back lot. It's called Vernon's Throne. And if you know Al Vernon, who's a retired assistant sheriff, he's 6'5", 300 plus. They call it Vernon's Throne. They moved Vernon's Throne to the back door, and we were able to use that porta potty for the course of a few days until we got adequate water pressure to use that. So dispatchers would walk down the stairs, use the porta potty, and then obviously walk back up. It was one of those necessary things that you don't necessarily think about. And luckily, we had one that was right there. We didn't have to wait a couple of days or several hours before that was able to happen. This is a look at our dispatch center. That person standing there up on the right who is facing the camera, that's dispatcher Brian Nelson. She was actually on medical leave at the time. She was taking care of her parents. She was living an hour and a half away. She's texting me as I'm sitting there at the console, and she's like, I'm coming in. I'm like, you can't. You're on a doctor's note. She's like, I'm coming in anyway. So sure enough, a couple hours later, she's behind me. I'm like, since you're not here, sit at my terminal. And she started to take 911 calls. So you can see the communities were coming together. The other thing I want to kind of point out here is that you look in the back, you can see that this little red glow is starting to kind of form a little bit. So, and there it is. It's getting even brighter. So now we're sitting in the dispatch center. Normally, we like to be away from all the chaos, right? We hear it on the phones, we hear it on the radios, but we don't actually physically see it. Well, now, thanks to our brand new building with these huge windows, now we're seeing the fire come straight at us. Not something you want to see as you're working any shift, I would say, but here we are. So this is actually our building. That's our radio tower. Dispatch center is actually on the left-hand side. I'll show you a picture of that in the morning on the next slide, but this is what the fire looks like there to the right. This is actually to the left-hand side, so there's a look at what we're looking at in our parking lot. And there's just another picture there. This is actually the left-hand side where the dispatch center would be. So at some point, I ended up talking with Marin County. I talked to the manager, Leanne Magoski, and she's checking in on me. She's like, how are things going? And I sent her that picture there on the left. And she was like, oh, my gosh, that's how close it was. So there on the right-hand side, that red line is the fire line. That circle is where our office is. So that's how close we were to the fire, basically taking us over, if you will. Our evacuation plans, well, I'm sure a lot of you have an evacuation plan in your facility. Well, we do too. Our EOC is our backup facility, which is great, except for the fact that it's 250 yards away from our office. So basically, leaving where we were, going there is not going to give us anything, especially since the fire was at that point only 150 yards from our dispatch center. Redcom, which is Fire Medical Dispatch, they're owned by American Medical Response. They're in our building. Their backup facility is over in St. Helena, which is over in Napa County, which you had to drive through the fire to get to it. So that wasn't necessarily an option either. One of the things about being a manager or supervisor or any kind of leadership role, a lot of times you have tough questions that you have to answer from people. And I hope that you never get a question like this asked of you while you're working a shift. One of the dispatchers is taking 911 calls. We have this fire that's breathing down our neck. She looks up at me with tears in her eyes, and she asked me if We're going to die. Not on my watch. Going to take care of you. Going to take care of all of you. We're going to get through this. Was I scared? I was a 5-year-old scared little boy inside. On the outside, taking care of business, doing what we needed to do. But yeah, it's one of those moments that will stick with you for the rest of your life. What's interesting too is we had the fire medical dispatch director was in the building, and I'm like talking about evacuation plans because the sheriff was like, "Hey, we might need to evacuate." So I go over and talk with Aaron Abbott, who's the director of Redcom, going, "Hey, we need to evacuate. What are our options?" He goes, "Let me do kind of a perimeter check." Okay, all right, do that. So he comes back a couple hours later. He goes, "Hey, there's some cars in the back parking lot you're going to need to move." I'm like, "Well, those are deputies' personal vehicles. They're a little busy right now. They're not going to be able to move them." He says, "Well, what we're going to do is we're going to put 2 strike teams on the building. Since the building is made of brick, we're basically going to hose down anything that gets our way. We're just going to shelter in place." You're going to what? So these cars could potentially catch on fire. You're basically going to hose down the building and keep the fire away. We have to stay inside? He's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do." Okay, I trust you. So now I then had to go into the dispatch center and go, "Hey, guess what? We got a great idea. We're going to stay." We're going to what? It's going to be fine. We're going to stay. Which I think ended up being the best decision for us. It was difficult in a lot of ways, but there's something comforting about being home. If we end up evacuating, it was going to be a lot more difficult to get back in. And, there's creature comforts. Having your own chair, having, everything that you need at your disposal was, I think, a blessing. At the time, I can tell you, I don't know. It was pretty rough. So what happened is the first night we had mutual aid officers that came in from various different agencies, and one large agency actually sent 2 dispatchers, which was great. We sent one over to the EOC to kind of help scribe, and we sat one down within the dispatch center. Within 10 minutes, he gets up and leaves and says, "I can't use your CAD." I have never, ever, ever wanted to punch somebody in the face so bad in my life. I didn't. I did not. But basically, he was offering to help and then just couldn't, said our CAD was too confusing and left. Well, with that, we needed help. So what we did is we reached out to our neighbors down south at Marin County Sheriff's Office because they use the same CAD as us. And luckily, a lot of their dispatchers live in our area. Says, "Hey, can you help us?" And sure enough, they were very happy to help and sent dispatchers up for various different shifts so that we could have as many seats filled as possible to take on this influx of calls and radio traffic. We activated a turret activation. It was one of the very first turret activations in our state. When reaching out to Jamie Hudson, thank you, Jamie, still again from Elk Grove PD. Basically, the request was, we'll take anybody who can use Hexagon CAD, because they were basically able to sit down within a matter of minutes, log in, gave them a login, and get them going, which was great. We had almost a dozen different agencies help out, which is just a show of the family that we have, which is absolutely amazing. We had roughly about 150 extra patrol units on the streets at any given time from various different agencies. So they were talking in their code. We were trying to give them general speak so that we could kind of monitor their progress and get things documented as far as this house, this person is refusing to leave, or we've had different issues. I do have a funny story to tell on a bigger agency. We had a foot pursuit at one point. 3 of the officers took off on foot after this said suspect, and all 3 of them ended up slipping and winding up on their butts. When asked what happened, they said, "Well, we don't have grass in our city. We're pretty much a concrete jungle down there." So one of those funny stories. The bad guy got away that time, but just one of those funny things. We're country folk, apparently. All right. So the other thing that was great about our CAD system is we were able to create units very quickly on the fly. So we were able to, so the Alameda County is our primary agency for mutual aid relief. We were able to do like AC1, AC2, AC3, up to AC20, whatever it was. San Francisco 1, 2, 3, just to kind of keep track of everything and keep them all kind of on the same page, which is very helpful. So here's the next day. So here's October the 9th. This is a video looking out of our facility, and there's a little bit of smoke there. It's one of those disconcerting things that you don't want to see looking out of your facility, but there it is. So Yeah, it was interesting. About 4 or 5 days in, we had some Marin County dispatchers that were on duty, and I get a text message again from Leanne from Marin County at the time, and she says, "Hey, what are you doing about the smoke in your dispatch center?" I'm like, "What smoke?" The truth is, we've been living it for so long. It's like we have been smoking 14 packs of cigarettes a day and didn't even notice. So what we ended up doing is they had gotten these Costco air filters, and they were kind of placed around the building, various different offices, accounting and personnel and whatever. So what I would do at 5 o'clock is I would go grab all of them, because we were kind of a relatively large dispatch center, and I would plug them all into the dispatch center, run them for basically 18 hours. And then when day shift kind of came back in, the other offices, I would take them back in, put them back, and then every day I would rush through. And then at one point, they had these things called scrubbers, which is a huge air purifier which kind of scrubs the air. The problem is they're really loud, so we kind of put that in the hallway just to kind of clean the air as best we could. But there we were. This is some pictures of some of the mutual aid. We have a mixture here of dispatchers from our agencies and different dispatch from other agencies. You see some of the food there. We'll kind of talk a little bit about that. You can also see kind of how big our center is. So right now we had 12 workstations. Right now we have 14. One of the positives that came out of this is the Board of Supervisors was like, well, what do you need? And I had been asking for years for new workstations. I'm like, it'd be great to get new workstations. So sure enough, they funded some workstations for us. We got brand new workstations. We got 14 different workstations from Evans. And in that back corner, what we ended up doing is we ended up putting up a couple walls. We created a little zen area with a nice long couch. We have a treadmill back there for people to kind of go and relax. We have a break room too, but you get interrupted in the break room, people getting water or heating up food or whatever. So now we have what I call a little zen area in the back corner, so people can just kind of relax and chill, put on some noise canceling headphones, and totally tone out from the world. As you know, there's a lot going on sometimes. Here's another picture in front of our nice little flag there that we have, which is a very cool little gift there. So what we have here is every red dot signifies a structure loss. So in the upper left there, that's the Tubbs Fire. Right in front of you there, that's the Nuns Fire. And we'll kind of get into some specifics here. But you can see here up at the top in the left-hand side, I think you can probably see my little pointer here. This is where the Tubbs Fire started and went down this path. What I didn't realize and didn't know at the time is that this fire took the same path 50 years prior, but it took it a week to go this path. The wind was so bad that it took it 4 hours to do what it did 50 years prior in a week, which is why it kind of caught everybody off guard. Here's just a closer picture there of the Nuns Fire. Here is the Tubbs Fire there. You can see a lot of $1 million homes there in the middle. We had over 200 doctors in our county that lost their homes because this Fountain Grove area was a lot of $1 million homes. So you see a lot of those doctors at that point were homeless. This is the famous Coffee Park. What had happened is the Tubbs Fire had jumped over a 6-lane freeway there and basically took out Coffee Park. So obviously every red dot there represents somebody's residence. So it just decimated out that area. I remember taking a 911 call. It was one of those things where, I hadn't, as a manager, I hadn't necessarily put on a headset very much. So when I came in at like 1:30 in the morning, I needed to do something, right? And what I needed to do was answer the phones because they were just ringing off the hook. They just wouldn't stop. So basically, I grabbed somebody's headset. I put it on. I logged into CAD. My CAD logged in work. I put my headset on. I remember taking a deep breath and saying, "Please don't have an emergency. Please don't have an emergency." Well, every call I was taking was a 911 call. So yeah, that my dream wasn't going to happen there. So I was definitely dealing with those emergencies all the time. I took a 911 call from a resident that says, "Hey, should I evacuate?" It's kind of early on in the fire. Should I evacuate? And based on where we knew the fire at the time, where we thought the fire was, I'm like, no. And he's like, well, I have fire in my backyard. I'm like, then go. What's interesting is people apparently need to be told when to leave. If the fire is close, go. So what we're saying, if it's red, go. Time to get out of there. What's other interesting is you see that little plume of red there on the right-hand side. That's actually a mobile home park. This is the worst name for a retirement community mobile home park that there is. Are you ready? Journey's End. I'm sorry I didn't name it, but Journey's Inn Mobile Home Park, basically all of their, it's not funny, all of their trailers there were burned. I can tell you one of the interesting things about this is when this thing started, I really imagined we were going to have hundreds, maybe even 1,000 people who've lost their life because of the time. We're talking midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Anybody who loses their life, it's a tragedy. We had 22 people who perished because of the Tubbs fire. I can tell you that says a lot about the community and how they took care of each other, because this thing spread so rapidly and so fast that they were taking care of one another, because obviously we just didn't have enough resources to pull down and take people away. But that does say a lot about Santa Rosa itself. So what this shows you here is that yellow, that's the Tubbs fire. This red dot here is the fire that you really see that's close to our dispatch center. So here's our facility here. That large pink building here on the right, that's a Home Depot. Luckily, that Home Depot didn't go up. If that Home Depot would have went up, we would have been in some serious trouble. We would have had to evacuate them because there was going to be no stopping it at that point. And really, the only thing that stopped it was the wind. The wind shifted and it went back onto itself. That's the only thing that stopped this fire from going all the way to the coast, quite frankly. It was that the wind shifted all on its own. Firefighters weren't in protection mode. They were basically in life-saving mode, trying to get people out of there as best they could. So kudos to them for all that they did. Here is a picture of Coffee Park. So you can just see it's just absolutely decimated. There's truly just nothing left. And what's interesting about fire, as compared to maybe a hurricane or other kind of natural disasters, is that there really is nothing left. At one point, we were looking for doing body recoveries, and they were looking at a property, and it was 18 inches high that used to be a 3-story house. So it was just absolutely leveled. This used to be $1 million house, and now it's just a doorway. So what had happened is about 4 days in, I had a lieutenant drive me around some of the facilities just to kind of see what the damage was. Was able to kind of take these pictures. There you see another stairway there to a house that's non-existent. But of course, there on the right, there is a house. So you see that a lot. You see that a lot in natural disasters, especially tornadoes and things, where one house will be standing, but the houses next to them are not. It was no different with this fire as well. And there was really no rhyme or reason that I could tell why one house was saved and one wasn't. Here's the driveway. This is down in Coffee Park, so you can see that the you see like maybe a refrigerator or a chimney. That's all that's left there. What's interesting about these kind of events too is that it creates its own weather. So I've never heard of this terminology before, but fire tornadoes. So what would happen is it would, as you see here, it would basically pick up a car, flip it around, do whatever it wants to do to it, and throw it down onto the roadway. So I can only imagine if I was in the process of trying to evacuate, trying to navigate through all this stuff, and the amount of burnt out cars in the area it was mind-boggling to see all these burnt out cars. And of course they were all down the ground because all the tires had melted off. Here's another home. You can see their washer and dryer there in the back. Just truly nothing left. And even driving through there, it was eerie because you used to not be able to see that far at all, and now you could just see for a mile because everything was just burned down to the ground. The other thing that I found very interesting in walking around during this time is that you'd see nails and things everywhere, because basically the houses would just disintegrate or explode, if you would, and the metal was just left behind. So you see glass in a lot of places. You'd see nails, as you see there. It was just debris everywhere. I'm not sure what was in this truck, but it burned so hot it just melted. There was a lot of people who had these fancy safes. It burned so hot that the safe was okay, but the contents inside still burned because it was just so hot. This is a Santa Rosa PD vehicle that had caught fire due to an ember. Some of the aftermath, our EMG, it's emergency management group. That's the sheriff, assistant sheriff, the upper management requested a list of everyone in the department who had lost their homes. Because what would happen is they'd be talking to a deputy or an employee, and they'd be talking about the fires. And then afterwards, they'd find out from somebody that person had lost their home, because that wasn't the focus of the deputy or whoever it was they were talking about. We were still in task mode. So what they really wanted to do was to reach out to those people to make sure that they were okay, and take care of them best they can. The bottom line is we had 29 department members who lost their homes. Most of those were deputies in the area where this happened. We had 2 retired dispatchers who had lost their homes as well. One of the things that happened too is we had one of our seasoned dispatchers after 25 plus years decided, you know what, I'm done. And what was I going to say? Yeah, I totally get it. So this person hadn't planned on retiring, but decided after this event that, this was enough for her. We lost 1 supervisor and 1 dispatcher as well who retired out medically because of the fire. Did an amazing job, and this job just sometimes takes its toll on you, and amazing people, but it's some of the aftermath that we were dealing with. We had a trainee who was unable to complete her training program because we weren't able to train for like a month. We were just in survival mode, and we weren't able to extend her probationary period. HR wouldn't let us. But I have great news about this trainee. We put her down as a CSO since she wasn't able to complete her training program. And about a year and a half later, said, I really want to come back. I really want to be a dispatcher. Had to put her through another mini background, of course. Started up her training program again. Luckily we got to modify it, and she's a full-fledged dispatcher now. Just an amazing person. The poor thing, she could only answer phones. That's where she was in the training program. So she literally for 40 hours a week for a month was just getting hammered on phones, and we're trying to tell her it's really not like this all the time. It's really not like this. This is a once in a career thing, which is true, even though we've had fires since then. But she really took the brunt of it all. And then when she came back after a mini vacation, she took a murder-suicide call, and she was on the line with the murderer for 90 minutes as response time. We have a large county, so they happen to be on the coast. It took a long time to get somebody out there. So yeah, she's good on phones for sure. So. All right. So what worked? Well, putting our message out on social media worked really well for us. Luckily, the previous sheriff, prior to Sheriff Giordano, really set us down a great path to be on Facebook and different social media. So people were listening. Of course, TV wanted to put out a different angle as far as what had happened, what we could have done differently. So what we started to do is they were recording the TV interviews that they were splicing and dicing and doing whatever they wanted to do to get the news. We would record the entire TV interview and then place it on our Facebook, so that the public could see A through Z exactly what was said instead of exactly how they wanted to paint the narrative. We set up a public line for non-emergency calls related to the fire, especially missing persons. Because what happens is obviously people want to hear from their loved ones, and we had many cell towers that were down and people weren't able to get in touch with the people. And last thing you want to do is enter in a bunch of missing persons reports when there really isn't missing persons. So we had over 2,261 reports of missing people during this time, which a majority of them, with the exception of the 22, were located. And we had a whole division, our violent crimes division did a whole thing where they were looking on Facebook and doing different research to try to see if this person was around. Well, we had 2 trainees at the time too, so we had them temporarily assigned over to the violent crimes division to do the data entry, because they were so new that they weren't even able to help with us on phones. So that was a great use of their skill set and gave them experience of working over in the BCI division. The other thing that they did was they used a matrix to search for the highly probable deaths first. So basically, did the person live in the burn area? Did they have any kind of health issues as far as maybe age or disability or whatever? And at one time, they basically had a 100% rate where if they thought that they were potentially perished, they would go to the house and they would find different things. Unfortunately, the fire burned so hot, in a lot of cases, they were only able to identify, in one case, a person due to they had a hip replacement. So they actually found the hip piece that was replaced, the metal, had a number on it, and that's actually how they were able to determine that person had perished. So it's one of those small, interesting things that you learn. The other thing that we did is we kept 3 radio frequencies up 24/7 for about 2 weeks, sometimes 4. And that 4th channel, sometimes we call that the dead channel, because we would have our corners unit, when they were doing these searches in different areas, they would have their own channel. They could kind of just monitor them, and if they needed something, we would come up. But that was a way to kind of keep things going in different directions while helping them out in the field as well. The other thing that the department did, which was great, is they had 2 deputies actually were assigned to go to each home of the deputies in the burned area and try to find their gun safe to secure weapons. Obviously, we were patrolling the area for looters and things like that, but we wanted to definitely secure those weapons if we could. So that was very helpful to those people who had lost their homes. When call volume was slow, the dispatchers that we had on duty, we wanted them to leave. A lot of them didn't want to. Of course, they wanted to be there to do what they needed to do for their community, but they really needed to go home, go grocery shopping, do some laundry, just relax. So we had the mutual aid units that were there. They were able to pick us up when we were down, and just to give people a break, which is a necessary thing. Good and bad news. We even have more cameras now. We have these cameras that we can actually watch the radio towers to make sure they're protected from the fire. Because again, you lose your radio towers, you lose your radio infrastructure, you're really kind of a fish out of water. So even recently, good news, bad news, you can watch these cameras and you can see the fires and you can see the flames. But bad news is you can see the fire and you can see the flames. So. The Deputy Sheriff's Association did a great job. This is the union of the deputies, and basically what they did is they took a whole bunch of donations from many places, and they basically set up a makeshift store for the victims of the fire. At first, it was only opened up to the members of our office, but then they did such a great job of getting lots of resources in that they were able to open up to all county employees who had lost their homes. And in typical dispatch function too, we had a lot of dispatchers who wanted to be here, but we had enough coverage and we were telling people to go home. So instead of dispatcher workaround, so what they would do is instead of coming, since they weren't needed at work, they would go volunteer at the DSA and help out there. So typical dispatcher workaround function. They want to do something, they're going to figure out a way to do it. We had Public Records Act requests. We had over 60 requests, 23 for the 911 audio, the logs, and the event chronologies. A lot of ways looking for a reason why maybe we screwed up or how we could have done things differently. What we ended up doing, which ended up being Marin County's idea, is that we said, well, we don't have the time to sit through all this audio, redact names, addresses, and things like that. What we'll do is you can come in here and you can listen to our audio recordings. If you find something that you want, we will then redact the information and we'll give it to you. Only one agency, our local paper, ended up taking us up on that offer. They were here for roughly 45 minutes. They didn't get the story that they wanted. They hunt and pecked around for a little bit and wanted to hear this call, wanted to hear a call at midnight, wanted to hear a call at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then we're satisfied that there was nothing left there. So that was great that we were able to kind of do that, provide that service without, I can't tell you how many hours it would have taken us to pull all that audio and redact everything to have that available just for them to just kind of listen to. Is there improvement? Well, our notification system. So at the time, the dispatchers were only trained on SOCO Alert, which you might be familiar with it as Code Red. The mass notifications were done, but, with all the cell towers down, it was only a 71% fail rate. So the message, we tried to get it out. It's not something that we use all the time. And unfortunately, it took some time to get that message out because the phones were just ringing off the hook. And now we're trained on Nixle, iPods, and EAS. And I do think that we finally have somebody's ear that we're really not the best place for this. So the Department of Emergency Management is really on board with getting these messages out. And we're really way more proactive with regards to this. We've learned a lot. And unfortunately, we've been able to kind of test that theory over the course of the last couple of years, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes here. But that was one of the areas that we did improve on. We're still working on getting that radio room air conditioning on the backup generator because when and if this does happen again, or if we have an issue where we lose power, we need that radio room to be cooled. Backup facility, yeah, we're still working on that. Our backup facility is still over at the EOC. Still not at all the best option. And of course, with budgets being the way they are, I don't see that happening anytime soon, but it's definitely something that we're working towards securing something. Yeah, quite frankly, we're still working through our PTSD issues. Like I said, even today, being the anniversary, it's just difficult. And I think it's interesting as dispatchers, we don't, especially if one of our neighbors or coworkers is having a problem, we don't want to acknowledge that they have a problem because that means that we might have a problem as well. So kudos to those who are reaching out and seeking services and doing what they need to do to make themselves healthy because, as we know, this job can take a toll on us every day. And it's just for the amazing work that we do, it's not worth losing ourselves for it. So, all right, let's talk about the food. 1 week prior, the October rampage happened in Las Vegas. So we had actually sent food over. We had sent coffee over to Las Vegas Comm Center. And I was talking to one of the supervisors being like, what do you need? And they're like, oh, we really have everything we need. And now I full on realize exactly what they meant. So in this case, this is the Round Table Pizza truck had pulled up in front of us, and they were giving us food. I was trying, right when this first started, I was going to be on like a Whole30 kind of diet. Lasted about 30 seconds, and I think I ended up gaining 20 pounds over the course of these couple of weeks because of the food that they delivered. So, of course, there's some dispatch staples. If you've never had Dutch Brothers coffee before, that's the only way to describe it is that's legalized crack. It's the most delicious thing you've ever drunk in your life. There's some water and there's a Diet Coke, and that is a red Solo cup, but it doesn't have beer in it. I don't think it does, anyways. All right. So there's some food. We have some people who were very kind to write some notes to us, thanking us for the service that we do, which is obviously great. Again, there's that deliciousness right there in that coffee truck. I might have to get one on the way home. All right, there we have a taco truck out there. We had to find different ways to ease our stress. So one of the supervisors came up with Mustache Day. You're like, well, what is Mustache Day? Well, this is Mustache Day. So we had everybody had on these fake mustaches. There in the back corner, there was actually 2 Marin County dispatchers that are taking a selfie there with their mustaches on. There's one of our dispatchers, PJ, one of the funniest people you ever meet in your life. She's got her mustache on while she's talking to a 911 caller. We had Doggy Day, so I was sitting in a management meeting, and it's against our policy to have dogs in the building. So I basically said, hey, I'm bringing in a dog. And they're like, you're going to do what? I'm like, I'm bringing in a dog. I had watched the news one night and saw that these dogs were visiting the Las Vegas facility. I'm like, well, we should do that. I can tell you that these dogs are absolutely amazing. Check that out. They would come in, they would lay down right next to you, and they're just a bundle of love. It was one of the best things that we did after the fact for our people, and just brought so much joy to have some comfort there. I mean, look at that. I mean, you just can't not love that, right? It's just absolutely great. We have Massage Day too. Shout out to Village Therapeutics here in Santa Rosa. They called up and says, hey, we have a massage chair that we can put into somewhere, and we'll give people 10-minute massages. So sure enough, we kicked the supervisors out of their office, threw in a massage chair. We had 2 massage chairs actually, and 2 massage therapists came in, gave anybody who wanted it. It wasn't obviously required, but gave anybody who wanted it a back massage, which was absolutely great. Kudos to them for providing that service. Hey, celebrities. So this is our dispatcher, Monica Baker. She was working the primary channel at the time. So the American Music Awards that year says, hey, we want to reach out, want to have one of your first responders here to come down. So she's very fortunate enough to go down. There she is hanging out with Jamie Foxx, hanging out with Heidi Klum. There's Mr. Fox again. It's pretty funny. We also got invited to this amazing dinner that was hosted by Tyler Florence. It was interesting because it was actually right on the border of Napa and Sonoma counties. It was a table that sat 500 people. So 250 people on the Napa County side and 250 people on the Sonoma side, and watched the sunset, which is legit. And you see part of the table there. It went all the way down and sat 250 people again on the left and 250 people on the right, which is amazing. So this is our Sheriff Giordano. He became a celebrity. Many of you might have seen him maybe on the news and whatnot. He was actually only appointed the sheriff. The sheriff at the time had ended up retiring out medical. So he became the sheriff for roughly only 15 months. Is what he agreed to. And I remember teasing him, being like, hey, 15 months, come on, what's the big deal? Sure enough, 2 months after that had happened, now he's dealing with the largest disaster that we've ever faced in our county. And what they did is they made this cutout of him. That's actually a cutout of him that they started to use in personnel. So when they first got it, I took a picture with it, and I sent it over to him. And he's in a meeting, and he looks at his phone. And he goes, I don't remember taking that picture with Don, and kind of just puts it aside. Within 20 minutes, he has 30 messages from 30 different people with the same picture, and he starts to realize that something has happened. Yes, we also called him Sheriff Hottie as well, for those of you who, whatever. Next. All right. I have this pin. Let me hit the button here. So here we go again. October 2019, we had another fire. This one is called the Kincaid Fire. Going towards the town of Windsor, as another populated area, we had a lot of firefighters and police. A lot of dispatchers live up there. This fire was hard in a lot of ways mentally. It just kind of felt like, here we go again. It was also hard because there's nothing like standing behind. I was standing behind the dispatch supervisor as they were calling out streets and they were pulling back, basically saying that this street is going to lose their house, this street's going to lose their house. And there I am standing behind the dispatch supervisor and they call out her street. What do you say? You can't tell them to go home. They have no home to go to. It's one of those heart-wrenching moments. The positive of this is that they actually didn't lose their home. Through all of this, none of our people have lost their home. We did have a Redcom dispatcher in the first fire. His family did lose his home, but he had just bought a house, so they actually moved in with him. We've had a lot of dispatchers that had to stay in hotels or different shelters and things like that, but they never missed a beat, didn't miss any shifts, did what they had to do. But here we go again in 2019. This purple is the evacuation zone. The red spots where the fire is. What the fear was is Cal Fire had models that showed this fire going to the coast in 4 hours. So we're talking hundreds of thousands of people that needed to be evacuated, and this is a heavily wooded area as well. So, we were getting people out of there doing what we had to do. We had learned, so we're trying to be ahead of the game, trying to get people out of there. You see deputies pretending to be firefighters there, trying to wet down the homes. You can see the smoke there in the background. This is in Windsor where the fire was burned out a few homes there on the outer ridge, but luckily they were able to save most of the homes. They talk a lot about in the state defensible space, and you can see there the red line is actually where those airplanes, which if you've ever seen that live in an action, is legit awesome. Them dropping fire retardant down, but you can see there the burn area, the burn scar, and there you see a home with defensible space that was actually saved there from tragedy. Yeah, so if that wasn't enough, how about we fast forward to this year? August and currently actually September of 2020, we're dealing with it again. And every time this kind of happens, it takes a few hours to kind of reset and kind of get your head in the game. 2017 was just so bad. How bad it can be, but we're doing such a great job with evacuations and things like that we're this time we actually didn't request any mutual aid. In September of 2020, we didn't have to open up any additional frequencies. We have had no loss of life the last few fires, 2017 being the only one that we had some lives lost in. This time this September fire, we had one deputy and one records person that have unfortunately lost their homes. But as far as the sheer magnitude of homes that were lost, we've experienced nothing like that since, thank goodness. But it's just something we live with every day. It used to be, red flag warnings would happen and nobody would really care. Now when red flag happens in this community, everybody's on heightened awareness. And I can tell you heat and wind are not my friend. Not exactly a big fan of hanging out outside or even looking out outside and seeing wind blowing on a hot day, because definitely memories there of what has happened and what's possible. So not so bueno. This is actually an interesting picture. These are all the fires that we've had in our county since 2017, all in one picture. So you can basically see the whole eastern side of our county at one point in the last 3 years has burned. On the left-hand side, that's the Walbridge fire, that big one, and the small one there. Can't remember the name of that one. Those are ones that have been burning. Started in August. That Walbridge fire is really close to Lake Sonoma, and that might actually still be burning today. They said they're just going to let it burn out, so it's going to take like 2 months to burn out. So just one of those crazy things. So yeah, we've been dealing with smoke in the air for a lot lately. So yeah, I'm not a smoker, but I'm sure next time I go to the doctor, they're going to ask me what kind of cigarettes I smoke because of all of the smoke inhalation that we've had. So this masks are playing double duty for us right now. So. Here you go. Thank you. You're amazing. Dispatch, law enforcement officers, fire, and EMS. And I'm also very proud of the Calnina Group and the dispatchers here in the state of California. As of January 1st, 2021, We are recognized finally as first responders, which is a big deal. Only one small step, though. We're not done as far as getting the proper recognition and the proper safety retirements and any kind of help that we need to make our people healthy and safe. We're all about it. There's my email. If you need anything, want to hear more of my story, I'll be at usually if there's a conference, I'm usually there. Not in these COVID times, but enjoy meeting with you and talk with you. There's my email. Shoot me an email if you want to talk about preparations or things that you've done. Maybe you have kind of a similar experience, and it's interesting talking with some people who've had similar experiences, and you're all heroes. Thank you for all that you do. I appreciate it. And you're done. We're done. We're 10-8, right?
Yeah, man. Oh, well done.
Thank you.
I can't thank you enough. Finally getting a chance to see this presentation. I see Stacy in here. You know, we didn't get a chance to see it at Calnina. She was sharing her story and everything as well, and it's just amazing, man. So there's a question that came in here that I want to go over really quick before we wrap up, and it says that in reference to the PRA requests, do you have to go through city attorneys to approve having entities come in to listen to the calls and identify what they wanted?
No, because normally a PRA request, they're allowed to have whatever they want, right? Normally a Public Records Act request comes in, you have 7 days to basically give them the public record, because every 911 call is really a public record. They have access to it. But we didn't want to give them every call that we have. Would have taken us weeks to process it, because we have to take out, names and addresses and things like that. We didn't have to. So luckily, by having them in here, they couldn't take any notes. They couldn't use any recording equipment. They could only listen, and then we would provide them with the data, the audio calls afterward when we didn't need to. And also on the flip side, yes, County Council did approve that process of them coming in instead of basically giving them everything that they wanted. So yeah.
Perfect. Man.
All right.
Again.
Is it happy hour? I mean, it's not really happy hour in California, but it's 2020. You can drink anytime you want.
This
right?
is true.
It's the pandemic,
true,
people. Alcohol sanitizes.
Now, you had your information up there. What I want to do is I want to share this really quick to the group that's here, because I created this. Should have created it off the bat, and I didn't think about it until everybody was trying to get emails from each other. But if you go to this, I'm putting it in the comments right now. If you go to this group right here, you can join up, and this is for Dare to Be Great 2. This is for people to simply go in there and continue the conversation on everything that they've learned. I've added all of the images on the sessions and everything else. So, Don, if you end up joining, those who are in there can ask questions as well. That was another part of this, because, when we go to these conferences and, sometimes we wait to the very end, there's a bunch of people who are up there talking to the speaker, and you want to give them their business card, or you don't have a business card. Well, this is kind of the same thing, except it's just in a community, in a group, and we can talk like that. So that just enhances the experience. And again, man, thank you so much for sharing the story, for having the courage, especially on this day as the anniversary as well. Thank you for having the courage to share it. I know that it could not have been that easy, but I'm sure, like you and a lot of other people, by sharing the story and the experience, if it helps just one person, it's all worth it.
Agreed. Thank you for everything you do, Ricardo. Great conference. Leah as well. Everybody involved. Just another amazing run. Great job.
Thank you. And to everyone who is watching right now, thank you all for being a part of this experience of Dare to Be Great. And we're going to continue the conversation in the last Dare to Be Great 2 after the greatness recap. And if you added the frame on Facebook for the t-shirt giveaway, you might have won. I've got the winners, so make sure to go over there and check it out. But again, thank you very much, Don, for everything, and for everyone who is here, who joined every single session, and for the job that you do every single day is the most vital piece of public safety. And I just can't thank you all enough. It's been amazing. And for those who are watching on replay, same thing. And all of you who are watching right now, you can always come back and watch every single session as many times as you want, because they're on replay. You can watch it on demand. and on your own time. So have a good one, everyone, and thank you for everything. It's been amazing.
All right. Goodbye. Thank you.